golden. So those of you who are sticking around for the next session today, we're moving on to a slightly different topic. We're moving on to a topic around women supporting women in the professional realm. So Claire obviously is our Director of P&C at Red Carnation, who is going to introduce you to her stellar lineup of guest panelists, bringing you their insights, their expertise and their personal experiences in terms of women supporting other women. So I will catch you again at the conclusion of this session, just to give you a view of what to expect for day 5, our final day of the IDEA Festival, and also just to round out the day. But Claire, if I can hand over to you, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Melinda. Wow, what a way to start this morning. That video was just something just so special and really, really thought-provoking. So I've got a bit of a croaky voice this morning, so excuse me. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me this morning. Day 4, what a week it's been of the TTC IDEA Festival. As Melinda said, my name is Claire. I'm Director of People and Culture for Red Carnation Hotels. I am also the newly appointed chair of the RCH Women's Circle. So I'm very excited to have 3 successful women on the call with very different careers. Here this morning to find out how they have navigated the world of work and to hear any words of wisdom they would like to share. So if I could ask Claire Steiner, Victoria Azubuike and Suzie Thompson to come on camera. Brilliant. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, everyone.
Lovely to see you all. We're going to have, well, I have got quite a few questions actually to ask you, and I'm sure there will be some questions from the group as well. So what I thought we would do is I would hand over to you individually to introduce yourselves. So if I can come to you first, Claire. Lovely to see you. We know each other through the Global Travel and Tourism Partnership, and we've worked together for a number of years. I know that you wear many hats, so to speak. So could you introduce yourself, including the roles that you do, and just a brief sort of like how you got to where you are?
Well, thank you for a start very much for inviting me to be here. It's a real pleasure to be on such an esteemed panel. I'm looking forward to the session. So I am an HR professional by trade. I actually started off many years ago in the event space in London, but actually in a very male-dominated event space, working in architecture and building, believe it or not. I then worked for a water company, which is where I got into HR, and I did my HR qualifications when I was with them. I then took a very short career break and went to do some traveling and came back, and that's when I joined the tourism sector, the tourism and hospitality sector, when I became the head of HR for a big tour operator in the UK. When the tour operator was sold to a .com back in the early noughties, I decided to set up on my own. And since then, I've been a freelancer. So I work with lots and lots of different types of companies across the section. And that's my bread and butter. And that's kind of what keeps a roof over my head. But actually, my real passion is with talent, and I do an awful lot on that. So you mentioned the G2TP. We love an acronym, which is a multi-country educational program. For those who don't know, we're probably the biggest educational program you've never heard of. It's been going for about 30 years, and we're in 17 different countries, where we work predominantly with the state school systems to introduce careers in this amazing industry to young people, particularly in areas where tourism and hospitality are major job creators. So that's a really important part of what I do, and I love doing that. And then for many years, I've been the chair of education and training for the Institute of Travel and Tourism in the UK, which is a voluntary position, but I have a fantastic group of people and founded a few years ago something called Future You. And this has grown over the years, and we've been going for about 14 years. And this is where we bring industry and education together. We do roadshows around the UK at universities and colleges, and a big event at World Travel Market every year. And we now have it as a foundation, which we're growing now. And we've seen about 22,000 students in the last 14 years. So we're enormously proud because it's run by volunteers. So so that's me, all things talent and HR.
Thank goodness you were introducing yourself. I would never have remembered.
Actually, I should also mention I'm an advisory board member for Women in Travel as well, which is a social enterprise.
I hope no one was trying to write those down, Claire. Thank you so much for sharing. I know you're so busy, but you know, the things that you do are just so impressive. So thank you very much. Suzie, if I can come to you next. So we both work for Red Carnation, so we know each other well. Could you introduce yourself, including the wide scope of your role and how you got to where you are too?
Yeah, hi everyone. Glad to be on the call. Thank you for inviting me to be part of today's festival. Yes, I've been with Red Carnation now for 12 years, through a variety of different roles, but I'll go back to the very beginning of my career and just share my journey. So after A-levels, I did a ski season, which effectively started my career, and kind of gave me the foundation that I wanted to work in travel. So I then went to study at Bournemouth University and did a degree in international hospitality management. Part of that degree was work placement year. So I lived in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, working for the Holiday Inn Oceanfront, doing a management program there, and then came back to finish my degree in Bournemouth before graduating. And then, because I'd worked for Holiday Inn in the US, I then went on to join the IHG graduate program, moved to Cambridge, took the role as reservations manager there, before moving to the Holiday Inn Kensington Forum here in London, which is a 900-bedroom hotel, and took on the reservations and revenue management roles there. And then moved across to work for lastminute.com in the early days, and managed the London hotel sector there before moving across to sister company Sabre Hospitality, which is on the technology side, for 5 years. And then eventually 12 years ago, I know I don't look old enough for this story, but then I moved to Red Carnation Hotels 12 years ago as VP marketing. And then over the years, as the commercial structure of the business has changed, I'm now proudly leading the marketing team, but also the sales team, reservations, and PR for the company. So
wow. You've obviously started, you were a child prodigy, Suzie. You obviously started when you were about 6 or 7. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Incredible journey. So over to you, Victoria. We've got to know you, I've worked with you over the last year. Would you mind introducing yourself and how you got to be where you are?
Absolutely. It's literally perfect timing, because not even perfect timing, my one of the cleaners around my area is like making so much noise, so please forgive me if there's noise in the background, but I'll do my best to speak over it. So yeah, my name is Victoria Azubuike. I'm the founder of the US Group, and as you said, Claire, it's been great working with Red Carnation for the last few months, and I'll go into detail in just a second on exactly what I've been doing. But a bit about myself. I recently, 2 years ago, graduated from Warwick University, studying management there, which was great. It was a really, really interesting experience. Before that, I actually, a bit about my background, come from quite a low income background, and that has really shaped my outlook on life and why I am the kind of person I am and why I do the things that I do. And it wasn't until I went to Warwick University where I felt like, wow, like I was surrounded by so many great, people, but I really felt like it's a small fish in a huge pond, that I thought to myself, I'm probably not the only young woman here feeling the way that I feel. What could I actually do to, support my community? Essentially. So I started the US program at the time. So this was 5 years ago. And the initiative was just to bring young women from different parts of London together to essentially, from low economic backgrounds, to essentially just to help them understand how they could succeed in the beginning of their career journeys. So yeah, set out on that mission, had my first event in 2016 at my local youth club. Wasn't too sure what to expect, called it SHEU Leeds, and we had over 100 women turn up. So as a 90-year-old young girl at the time, I was just thinking, whoa, what is this? What's going on? And the initiative has really grown since then. So now we've worked with, well, as of 2021, worked with over 1,500 women all across the UK, Republic of Ireland, worked with organizations such as Google, Linklaters, and just, yeah, great organizations really who are passionate about, you know, promoting great women, and then took this year, actually decided, and then, yeah, featured in great publications such as BBC, the Daily Mail, um, quite of everything's leaving my head, but then this year decided, you know what, I'm going to take the big leap of faith and set out on a mission to, you know, build, actually, I think something that's more sustainable, which would be a recruitment arm to what we do. And that's where, you know, the relation started with Red Carnation and the Us group now. So before it was a program, but it's really evolved into so much more, where we just don't, you know, only support great women, but actually, you know, provide them with the opportunity to, you know, find great work. And now we do all different roles, all different industries, everything from, you know, a junior analyst all the way up to, you know, a HR business partner. So it's really an exciting journey at the moment, you know, providing great women with great, you know, opportunities and their next roles. And then we organize, you know, really cool and interesting events which actually act as recruitment opportunities. So, you know, 2-in-1. Not only are you coming leaving inspired and, you know, having great speakers, but also at the same time you're hearing you could potentially leave with a new job. And that's something we tried out with Red Carnation. And, you know, we had so many of our great attendees actually now with the Red Carnation Group hotel chain. So I think it's just, you know, yeah, really excited to be here, really excited to share more about my journey, even though I'm literally at the beginning of my career as a young 25-year-old navigating the world of work, but, you know, would love to share what I've learned so far.
Fabulous. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you. So we've got 3 people here who very different journeys in terms of the career. Suzie, if I can come to you first, in terms of work, what lessons have you learned along the way? And have there been any challenges as a woman in work that you've had to overcome?
Lessons I've learned along the way, I think just basically always taking the opportunity. If it's an opportunity to join a project or volunteer to help, or just to take the opportunity to gather skills, and almost understanding that you maybe don't need that skill today, but in 10 years' time, when you're in a senior role or you're running a different team, or you might need that skill. So probably having a longer term view in terms of acquiring skills is something I've learned along the way. And now I suppose I'm showing the benefit of that, where my career took me to work for a technology partner, to work for you know, an online travel agent, to work for a hotel business. And now my role is very much to oversee the technology, the partnerships that we have with the online travel agents, and running a central reservations office. So the skills from the different roles that I've had throughout my career have now given me the toolkit, if you like, to be able to do the job that I did today, although I probably wouldn't have had the foresight to see that in my earlier part of my career. But it is really about creating a sort of toolkit of skills and experiences that will then enable you to be able to do your job perhaps further down the line. And I would say the same thing for networking. You know, some of my best industry allies today are the people that I worked with when I was at lastminute.com, or the hoteliers that I met when I was, you know, managing that sort of London portfolio, or they were people that, you know, I started my career with, who are now all in very senior roles. But I suppose how that kind of translates today is that I have good access to decision makers in other businesses, which allows us to be, as a brand and as a company, more effective in our negotiations, in our discussions, and ultimately gives us more opportunities. So I suppose that would be my advice, is to create a toolkit of people and network, along with a sort of very diverse skill set, which will all come together at some point, and you'll reap the benefits of all of that networking that you did as a younger person.
So putting your hand up for everything. And networking, I think, is something perhaps we can talk about later. But I think that is such good advice, because, well, actually, let's talk about it now. So, I mean, in terms of sort of networking, and I think that's quite a scary word for a lot of people, especially when you're starting out in your career. So, have you got any tips on how to do that, Suzie?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you think of networking as though you have to go to an event and turn up with a name badge and walk around, that is very intimidating and scary. But I think networking is, can be networking on a one-to-one basis. Networking can be asking somebody for advice. Networking is really creating a community of support and contacts. But ultimately, the easiest way to network is to give value and add value to somebody else's journey. So, mentoring, offering to mentor, being mentored, asking questions. And again, just, it could also be volunteering or joining an interest group, or all of that is networking. Ultimately, you're just building the people that you contacts, essentially, but that doesn't have to be in the old kind of school sense of walking into a room and saying, hello, my name is Suzie, what do you do? So yeah, it can be also now very obviously some more virtual opportunities. So LinkedIn is a great platform for networking, but that doesn't necessarily mean trying to connect with everybody. It could also just be commenting, liking, sharing, and contributing to conversations that are happening.
Brilliant, thank you. Claire, coming over to you. One of the, I would imagine one of the main things that you do is network, because when you're working for yourself, that is a really important skill. I've seen you work the room. It seems to come very naturally to you. But as we're talking about networking, what kind of advice can you give?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Networking is my bread and butter in so many ways. I mean, I'm very lucky that I'm sure, like Suzie and yourself, I've got a very big network, and that's partly to do with being very old now. So having met a lot of people along the way, but I think, when I talk to a lot of younger people, particularly graduates and students, they're like, it's really nerve-wracking. You remember that first time you walk into an event and you might be on your own, you might not know anyone. And one of the things I say to them is, be prepared in terms of when people ask you, have succinct questions, but actually don't go in there trying to sell yourself too much and trying to get something from the people there. It's more a case of, and I say, look, our industry is one full of egos, particularly at senior level. I'm very happy to say I'm probably one of them. But, ask those questions and listen to people, listen to what's going on around you. You'll pick up lots of valuable advice. Be prepared, read the trade press so that you're more aware of what things are going on in the industry, so that you can contribute to conversations, be that, as Suzie said, on LinkedIn, but also personally as well. And always remember that even if you meet someone you think, well, they're of absolutely no use to me whatsoever, they're not going to help me on my journey at all, you don't know that, because actually everybody knows somebody. And I can genuinely, I'm very proud of this fact, I can say within the last sort of, how long have I been self-employed? 18 years. Every single role I've got has been through my network. So all my clients have come through my network. So I haven't had to go and find that business, which is, and I know that I'm very, very lucky like that. But that's what you just never know, who you're talking to. I remember talking to a startup, a young startup, and they were just chatting away. And actually, I was wearing a different hat. And then I saw them about a month later, and they went, "Oh my God, you do HR, don't you? Oh, we need your help." And then suddenly I was with them for another 5 years until they grew really big, and I put an HR team in there. So, you just never know where it's going to lead. Networking is the lifeblood of our sector. And I think one of the challenges that people have at the moment after the last 2 years is that we spent it all on screen. We haven't had that getting out and meeting people face to face. So for people who are at the start of that journey, you need to get out from behind the camera. You need to put yourself out there. But yeah, use all the social networks that are at your availability. And as Suzie said, great advice, comment, get your name known so that people might recognize your name because you've been seen commenting or taking part in things before they even meet you.
Brilliant. Thank you. And really impressive that that's how all of your work comes to you, Claire. I mean, that's just, you know, if there's ever a selling point for getting out there and getting your name out there, then that is definitely it. Thank you. And just staying with you for the moment, I mean, we talked about sort of like, you know, advice, networking and everything, and you gave some really good pointers there, as did Suzie, but has there been anything particular, any support or advice that you've received that you've taken and it's helped?
Yes, support definitely. Funny enough, it was my first boss many years ago, back in the 80s. And I think when you first start, you want to say yes to everything and you want to do everything and you're really keen to do everything. And she actually taught me the value of saying no, and saying no in the right way. Because, you know, there's that old saying, you know, better to do one thing at 100% than 10 things at 10%. And actually, that's something you learn at the start of your career. That, you know, and it's, but how do you say that when you want to be seen and you want to be visible, and so you want to put yourself out there? It's about not stretching yourself too thin and actually having the courage to say, I absolutely, definitely will do that, but at the moment I'm working on this. So if you can wait, I'll do that tomorrow. Unless they say, well, actually, I need it done today. And if in the UK, so, well, if it's more important than this, I'll do it today. But actually, no, and then I can't do it. And it's actually having, it is quite a tough thing to do at the start of your career. But that was probably one of the most valuable lessons I learned, was just having that ability to say no properly.
I've never heard that saying either, about the 100% and the what was it again?
Say it's better to do one thing at 100% than 10 things at 10%.
Okay, I'm going to take that. Thank you, Claire. Victoria, over to you, if I can come to you. Any support or advice that you've received, that you've taken and has helped?
Yeah, I think the number one piece of advice is just to always, and this actually ties in a lot to like networking and just, you know, any task you're given, just always seek ways to add extra value. And it's always like kind of like, you know, going beyond and above within, I think, your capacity and what you actually can do, but always trying to find ways to be, you know, a solution orientated person who just, you know, is seen as someone to just add value. And I think that's what I've tried to always do with like the clients that I work with, or just the work that I have done, to find, you know, extra, you know, what are your pain points, where can I add extra value? And I think that's something, you know, you could do, whether it's like, you know, speaking to your manager and finding out, you know, actually, is there any extra additional tasks that, you know, I could be doing, or you know, what are our plans, objectives for the upcoming quarter? Where could my, you know, help be, where could I, you know, add additional value there? So I think, yeah, just value is, you know, the life and blood of any, you know, business, any organization. So putting yourself in a position where you can be like a value orientated person almost, just will allow you to really, you know, do well within, you know, any career, I think. And that's just something that I've always tried to hone in on and just find ways to add value.
Thank you. And Suzie, if I can come to you on that. So any particular support or advice?
Yeah, similar to Victoria, really. I think adding value, but I would say if I had to be more granular about it, is adding value to your colleagues and the people around you, because I think then you become the person that everybody wants on their team. And by team, I mean, could be project or initiative, or so I think adding value to your boss, yes, is great and helpful, absolutely. But I think adding value to your teammates, making your teammates more successful, essentially, I think is a really, really important thing that I think a lot of people get right, but a lot of people get wrong. And I think there's a big difference between the person that gets that right and the person that gets that wrong in terms of how well they progress.
Really, really valuable advice. Absolutely. Thank you. While we're on that, if I can stay with you, Suzie, I mean, there's times at work where we all feel that kind of, you know, being overwhelmed. I think especially perhaps in the last couple of years. If someone's out there feeling a little bit like they need support, they're a bit overwhelmed, don't really know how to approach their manager, can you give any specific advice of like the best way to ask for support?
Yeah, I mean, I just think everything comes down to communication, everything. So finding some way to communicate, if you're unable to speak to your manager about it, it's finding someone else who you feel is going to be receiving of your information and give you some good support and advice. And that doesn't always have to be your line manager. It can certainly be a colleague, somebody outside of your immediate situation, or just your friendship groups. I think it's finding somebody that you think is going to help and support you, give you that value that you need, and give you that confidence to make a change or make a step. But yes, I think it's just about communicating with someone, but that doesn't always have to be the formal procedure of you must go and talk to your line manager if you feel you communicate better perhaps with somebody else.
Okay, great advice. Thank you. Claire, if I can come to you next, there's evidence that women in the workplace may not be as good as men when it comes to self-promotion. I've seen that a lot just recently. It seems to be, the sort of when you're reading different articles. I mean, how do you self-promote, sort of making your achievements visible without it feeling really uncomfortable?
Yeah, it's absolutely right, and I think no matter how extroverted person you are or introverted person you are, there's something, and I don't want to be too broad stroked about this, but about the women's psyche that we just feel that we can't push ourselves out there. So for instance, if we see a job that we want to go for, if we don't tick every single thing that they're looking for, we go, oh, I'm not sure if I can do it. Whereas traditionally men will be a lot more sort of confident in going, well, I can do 5 of those things anyway, or I'm sure I can do them, or I'll learn how to do them and go for it anyway. So I think that is changing, actually. I think the younger generations are getting a lot better than that. I know I've suffered from that, and I think it's, again, you kind of learn it through life, that you've got nothing to lose sometimes, have you? So what's the worst that can happen? You're going to be where you are today. But actually, I think going back, Suzie mentioned about, again, LinkedIn is a great way of doing it, but sort of putting yourself out there and becoming someone that has a voice, even if you don't want to say it out loud, but you can contribute in different ways. So maybe it's by volunteering, maybe it's by seeing, being someone that they can see that is keen to get involved. Having those conversations, communication 100% is really important. And I think it's just about recognizing that it doesn't, failure is okay, and that, but in order to fail, you've got to put yourself out there. And actually, most successful people that you listen to will say, I wouldn't be where I was if I hadn't failed somewhere along the line. And again, it's just sort of getting yourself around that sort of thinking, particularly when you start, you just want to be seen to be successful all the time. But it's okay to fail as long as you learn from it and you pick yourself up and you carry on. And actually, I think that's one thing women are very good at. I think we're very good at picking ourselves up and moving on there and saying, do you know what? Okay, I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah, brilliant. Victoria and Suzie, if I can bring you in on this as well.
Sorry, could you just repeat the question again, if that was okay?
Yeah, of course. We were just talking about how that there seems to be a lot of evidence that women are not as good as men at self-promotion.
Yeah, definitely. I think, hit it right on the head, like with, the stat that women need 100% of the criteria, whilst men only need like 60%, and they would apply, for that job. I think, and self-promotion is meant to be uncomfortable. I think, that's just naturally how it is. But I think it's just finding ways and strategies to deal with that uncomfort. It's almost the same thing as like imposter syndrome. That is because sometimes being an imposter is because you are probably in a new space or in a new environment where you do feel uncomfortable, and it's finding a way to actually move within that a level of uncomfortability. And I think with self-promotion, the truth is, and I think the harsh reality that I think sometimes we shy away from, is no one's going to promote you unless you can. Like, sometimes we will work hard, I think, as women, and expect our manager to notice when, unfortunately, they do have multiple responsibilities and multiple ways. So you have to find a way to, almost, like, you find a way to promote yourself in a way that's comfortable for you. But I think the first thing to know is that the truth is no one can, promote yourself on your behalf the way that you can. And I think it's even as simple as like sometimes scheduling a, one-to-one call with your line manager every quarter, just to update them with, the work that you are doing, current progress you're making, things you've actually learned from them, and ways that you can improve, but also highlighting the tasks that you've been able to achieve and, being able to do that you are very proud of. Because I think I think every woman should take pride in what they do and how they do it. I think so sometimes society does almost tells us that promote yourself, it's you have a big ego, you can't do that, where if you look at men do it very naturally. So again, it's finding a level and a way that you're comfortable in those one-to-one settings with your manager is a great way. If it is LinkedIn and sharing your achievement, that's it. But I think it's just for everybody to work within their remit and just have at the back of their mind that like you could work really hard on a piece of project, but if you are not going to speak up for yourself, the harsh reality is, in today's like no one can. So yeah, I think that's just the truth. And yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Victoria. It's kind of like a harsh reality, really, isn't it? And I think the that sort of sitting back and working hard. I think you get told if you work hard, just get your head down and work hard when you're at school, college, university. That's the kind of advice that you get, because you've got to get that qualification. And I think when the world of work is slightly different. What do you feel about this, Suzie?
I've always felt that I will let my performance kind of do the job for me, I suppose. If I work hard, if I add value, if I contribute, I've always believed that will do the kind of speaking for itself, I suppose. But what I would say to that is that I do think there is a requirement for an assertive attitude towards asking for what's fair. So let your job do the talking, your performance do the talking. All of the teammates that you're working with, who you've been adding value to, do the talking. And also works the other way. If your performance is rubbish and you're horrible to your teammates, the same thing will happen. Your manager will know about it. But I do think there is a certain need, I suppose, to make sure you do get what you deserve, and that you do ask for that promotion, that you do go for that job, that you do kind of, you do have to ask and put yourself forward. Because I think although you could do a good job and be a great employee, not everybody wants to progress in the career path. So it's also really important to make sure that people know that that's your intention, that's what your ambitions and aspirations are. Because you do run the risk of people not knowing that that's what you want to do, and if you don't kind of clearly set that out. So let your performance do the talking, but at the same time, champion, I guess, your career path, and make sure people know and hear your ambitions.
Yeah, definitely. Claire, were you going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was going to agree with that. I think one of the challenges is that you're quite right, Suzie. I think some people are quite happy where they are, and I think success is very different for everybody. Not everybody needs to be, the CEO or head of department to feel successful, and you need to acknowledge that. I think surrounding yourself with people who recognise that, and who are your allies, and we've talked a lot about that, and I'm sure we'll continue to do that, helps. I just think for some people, they struggle to find that visibility, because if they're quite, depending on their attitude and the business that they work within, and as Victoria mentioned, their manager might not be as sort of tuned into the team as a lot of people, that the doers are sometimes overlooked because they're just the reliable people. They just get on with it and they don't make a song and dance of it. And so I absolutely agree with what you're saying, that you have to push yourself out there, go for things. As I said, if you don't go for it, you'll never know, and if you do go for it, you'll get it. Well, okay, you're no worse off, but actually in some respect you're better off, because as you said, your manager will then know that you are actually keen to progress, but they might not have even realized that, because you're just someone who does their job, does it well, and doesn't rock the boat.
Yeah, that's true. It's a really good question or statement actually from Liz in the chat. And I think like sometimes, like with I guess, like working in HR, whether there isn't any, like tangible results, I guess, like so if you're working in a sales role, or that kind of, whether there's a financial aspect to it sometimes, like how would you advise somebody that was in that kind of behind the scenes role to self-promote? Any advice?
Sorry, who are you talking to there, Claire? Me?
Just general, three of you.
Be terribly polite.
Sorry. Okay, Claire, I'm going to come to you.
Oh no. Well, I think I kind of said it in my last bit. So I was actually waiting. Yeah, Victoria, Suzie.
Yeah, I think if it's again behind the scenes role, like I kind of do stand with like what I mentioned before. Like sometimes it's just so difficult to be seen that I think you do have to almost like, I think we know the work that we put in. We know sometimes, again, and it does depend on where you want to go and what you see as essential and important to you. But I think there's nothing, wrong with sharing that with the right sources who could help you, if you want to grow, if you want to develop within that role, and just letting them know, what you do or how you do it, or ways to improve or advance, especially sometimes if like it's so easy to be, maybe work may be so easy to be overlooked, or it's just kind of expected. So yeah, I would definitely say, speak to the right people, whether it's a manager, and just, share what you're doing, how you're doing, if there's any more ways to improve. And yeah, that's mainly what I would share.
Right,
so I would
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Victoria. Suzie, you mentioned this earlier, and again, it's something that we hear and read a lot about, is having a mentor. Do you, or did you have a mentor, sort of unofficially or officially? How important is it to have one? And if it is important, how do you go about getting one?
Yeah, I've had lots of different mentors. So when I started my graduate program, I was gifted a mentor. Awful, terrible. I learned a lot about how to not manage, how to not mentor, and the relationship, for context, it was very intimidating. I'm very successful. You're a small person who's just come in at the start of your career. There was no value for me, apart from I was scared to death about going to see this person. So I learned a lot from that, in terms of, because someone has gifted me a mentor doesn't mean that person's right for me, and that person couldn't have been more opposite. So I think the mentor relationship for me moving forward became one of, where was I naturally, who was I naturally gravitating to? Who was I looking at in my company I was working at, or in my industry, who I felt like I want to be that person. I want to be like that person. And I suppose then the mentoring relationships became more natural, because I wanted to kind of, and I'll always remember these people, and perhaps some of these people don't really realize that they were a mentor to me. But, I was always really inspired by this lady I used to work with. And I always remember when I was working in Cambridge, and she was the sales director. Her personality was just, 100% there and authentic. And she wasn't trying to be a corporate lady with a, suit on and marching around with a big bunch of keys. She, which she, wore the red suit to work. She shared things about her life, and she just every day turned up as herself. And then for me, I was really inspired by that, because that's the management style I have today. But I would say I definitely learned it from her, and she stopped me, I suppose, going down a corporate road of trying to be a version of myself, which is a dangerous road to go down, because it's something you can't maintain effectively and find happiness. So I'd say, there was a sort of somebody I looked up to and respected. And then also there have been people in my career who were more senior to me in the industry, but now I'm more senior than them. And the mentoring relationship is almost role reversal, which is quite interesting. And I enjoy being a mentor myself when you get a good fit with somebody. But effectively, I recognize through some of the mentoring relationships I've had in the past where I don't feel actually I am the right fit for that person. And because, it's really about finding someone you have a connection with and somebody whose advice is valuable to you, based on what your aspirations are, and what you need to get out of that relationship. Sometimes it's just, I need to get access to networking. I'd like some help with that, because actually in other areas of my work, I'm very confident and very competent. So yeah, I guess it's just understanding the kind of person that you vibe with naturally, but also, what value can you give them? What value can they give you in return?
And with this, I mean, you're so lucky to have somebody, to have that person, or to have had that person in your background that you looked up to. Was she an official mentor or unofficial mentor?
No, so I was the reservations manager in the same office,
right,
as the sales team, and she was the head of sales, which naturally is an extroverted, I suppose, role. But just watching the way people sort of enjoyed being in her presence, the energy that she brought when she came into the office, and all of those things were, things I took forward with me, that I like to come into the office and be like, "Hey guys, how's it going?" and bring energy wherever I go. I like to take a positive energy. And I suppose watching her and getting to know her was a great lesson in life, to say, you can totally be yourself, and that's how fun is that, to bring that to work every day. And I certainly encourage that culture within my teams.
Love that. It's brilliant. Thanks, Suzie. Claire, what about yourself?
Oh, yeah, I love that bit about being the authentic self. I think that's so true. And that's been a challenge I've had actually in my career, but we'll speak about that later. But yeah, so I've had some great mentors, men and women, and I've learned a lot from them. I think you can be quite targeted sometimes, as Suzie mentioned, finding, that person that maybe is, can teach you about things that you don't know about. And I think when I became self-employed, I wanted to be able to understand kind of more of the commercial value that HR can add, rather than just being that sort of, sit and tick boxes, which I know certainly you guys aren't at RCH, but I just felt that would help when I was going into smaller businesses without an HR function, that I could really help them. So I was quite sort of, targeting the people I knew I could work from. But again, as you mentioned just now, one of the things I've had a lot recently, particularly as I've got older and longer in my career, is younger mentors and that reverse mentoring, so that I form relationships with young, high flyers, people who are coming through the ranks, some who have overtaken me, which is lovely to see. And I learned so much from them, because I think, the world has changed so dramatically in the last sort of three decades that I've been working, that, things move at such a pace that having that younger mindset really kind of helps ground me, and stops me from going off on flights of fancy, thinking about things that happened sort of 20 years ago, that should still work now and probably don't. So there's that. But informal mentoring, I think your circle of friends, your circle of people that you work with, your network, you learn so much from just the people around you, and it's creating those allies and creating people that you can ask those ridiculous questions to, that they're not going to judge you for asking it and thinking, well, you should know that. And it's just having that comfort in it. So I'm a massive fan of mentoring. I think it's a really great way. I'm a proud mentor myself, but I've also continued to gain value as a mentee.
Brilliant, thank you. Victoria, did you have a mentor when you were at university?
Yes, I've had several mentors. I think it's really interesting because when I was trying to get into the corporate world, I had a lot of mentors within the corporate space who guided me throughout. And now that I'm like doing my own thing and like self-employed, I'm running my own business, I have a newer set of mentors who are like operating within the same space as me, or I can learn something from, whether it's like email marketing, or just like social media, or sales, like just different, or marketing. So now just have a new set of mentors. So yeah, I think it's definitely shifted and it's definitely changed. But I always and I've been a mentor as well with the women that I've supported as well throughout their journey. But I definitely have always said to people who ask, like, you know, how do I find a mentor? How do I, you know, develop that relationship? And I say I think sometimes we put so much pressure on finding a mentor that we forget to look at it like every other relationship. Like every other relationship, you would never go to your best friend or like someone that you want to date and say straight away, like, I want you to be my boyfriend. I want you to be like my best friend. Like, so why do we go to someone who we supposedly want to be a mentor and say, I want you to be my mentor? Like, I don't think any relationship is, you know, that's the best way to go about it. I think it always should start with, you know, a mentee providing value first. You know, as a friend, in friendships, you provide value to that other person, like provide value to them, ask them, you know. And I think, like you mentioned this in the beginning, when it comes to networking, you know, sometimes let them speak about themselves, just ask them questions and you take the seat back and just, you know, provide them and find out extra ways of how you can support them. Again, I think sometimes when it comes to mentorship, it's like, what can I get from this relationship? And I think that's the worst way to go into any relationship. It's always in the beginning, especially if you find someone who you want for them to mentor you. It should be, what value can I give to them? How could I just give and expect nothing in exchange? And that's where I've always seen the best relationships, like, you know, happen, like with mentorship relationship, because that person has always, you know, thought about how can I really support that individual. And in exchange, with time, like any relationship, a natural relationship just builds, and you will find that mentor supporting you, or where you have like, oh, can I just have 15 minutes of your time to run through this and that person is more willing, because you have, you know, built that level of like, you know, providing value for them first. So I always say that, like, you know, we should kind of look at mentorship as like a normal relationship. And what would you do in a normal relationship? You'll never ask straight away for someone to be your mentor. You'll always, you know, try to help that person out, and know, you know, later down the line, maybe they may help you. And it's not being taken as a free rider, right? Like, you know, you have limits, but it's always, I think, naturally as humans, again, it's take, and it should never ever be like that. And then, yeah, like when you do meet up with them, or when you're looking, you know, coming with specific questions that you may need their help with. I think, you know, if you want anyone to be your mentor, right, sometimes they are ahead of you, they are busy. So it's, you know, really being key on like, this is what I need from you, like this one question, this one piece of advice. And people always appreciate that, because it's like, you really value my time. And then reverse mentorship, absolutely. I think, again, with the nature of my business, where I do a lot of work with women, I see the next generation, like Gen Z, you know, who are going to be the majority of the workforce by 2028. I need to understand what they are thinking. I need to understand what they need, and, you know, building those relationships with them. And if I go to them, I'm just there to listen and find out. So yeah, that's my take on mentorship, really.
Thank you. I once had a mentee and I said, you know, like in our first meeting, what would you like to, you know, how can I help you? And she said, oh, well, I'd like you to take me out to different bars.
Wow. Wow. Straight to the point.
Which I thought was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So very conscious of time. So sort of around the room. So what single thing can we do to support women in the workplace? Suzie.
I think what we can do as managers is you know, really lead by example. So make sure that, you know, we are ensuring that ideas are heard, that the, you know, female members of our teams have the opportunity to contribute, that we celebrate success proudly, for our own achievements and also for the team, just to kind of, again, just be leading by example, and also, you know, sharing common vulnerabilities, and again, going back to, you know, being the real me, and, you know, not striving to show the next generation a kind of perfected female boss, when, you know, that's actually just not encouraging any authenticity or open and free communication within your team. So Yeah, leading by example, celebrating success, and just ensuring that there is space created for everybody in the team to have a voice.
Brilliant, thank you. Claire, can I come to you?
Yeah, a ditto to all of that. I couldn't have put that better myself. The only thing I suppose slightly negative would be to actually call out bad behaviour. So actually, when you see it happening, you hopefully people will have a group of allies, network, be male or female. I think it's important that men are brought into this conversation as well. But I think that because I probably am one of those people who wouldn't have too much of a problem of calling it out if it happened to me or if I saw it happen to someone else. But some women can't, and some women find it very difficult and might be intimidated by that, or they may be, particularly if they're in receipt of bad behaviour. So I think, you know, having people who can call it out, and I think, you know, there's a lot of great stuff going on in the workplace these days because of, you know, us being much more aware of unconscious bias, of issues around mental health, and about things that we've been talking about today. But people still have old habits that are hard to break, and they may not realise that they're saying things and it's coming out the way they are. So it's about, as I said, having someone, if it's not you, that can help you just correct those mistakes, because we're all learning all the time. So we need to call it out, and that's why I think your allies are so important at work. And it is, yes, absolutely 100% women supporting women, but I do think we need to bring some men in there as well.
Great, definitely. Thank you, Claire. And Victoria?
Yeah, I think it's just also like just continuing the conversation. So like, you know, having conversations like this, making sure that it's not only women in the room, but men also in the room. Sometimes I think it's super important and essential as well. So yeah, safe spaces like this, a chance for women to, you know, just share their experiences and share, you know, their challenges, but also celebrate their wins and like, you know, how far, you know, we've come as well, which I think is just essential for further, you know, exposure, awareness. So yeah, just continuing great conversations like this, I would say.
Brilliant, thank you. We have got some time for questions. If anyone would like to ask a question of the panel, then if you want to either turn your camera on and speak or put something in the chat box. Oh, Emily Kirk, did you want to come on camera?
I can do. I'll read out my question. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. That's been amazing. Some such good tips to take away. I was wondering, have you ever encountered a barrier or like any judgment in your career because of your gender being a woman? And if so, obviously, you've clearly all got so far. So how did you overcome it? That's an open question to anyone.
Thanks, Sam.
I'm happy to go first. It's partly to do with being a woman, and I think it's because we're a little bit more sensitive to it. But when I had my first senior position in HR, I was told by an external consultant to the business that I would never be taken seriously because A, of my ebullient nature, and B, because of my size. And that was quite a challenge. And I was like, what? And this is a woman, by the way, as well. It wasn't a man, it was a woman who said this to me. So I kind of, and I think I'm one of those people who goes, right, I'll show you. And I would just like to say I've never actually seen this woman since then, and she works in the industry, and I don't know where she is now. So I'm guessing
that sounds
she
really
hasn't been a massive
suspicious,
success.
Claire.
Yeah.
She hasn't been seen.
Yeah, hasn't been seen since that particular but you know, that's tough to go. And I think, you know, it goes back to being true to your authentic self. And I think I learned in some respects the hard way, but I think it's helped me as a person, both internally and the advice I can give, that it's okay to be yourself at work, but you just also never judge others than what you think they are. This is where the unconscious bias comes in sometimes. I think you see people and you automatically think they're going to be that kind of way. Often a loud person is hiding other insecurities. So there's so many different things that you need to sort of judge yourself on and judge other people on, or not judge yourself on and not judge other people on. And I think, you know, being true to yourself and not compromising your own ideals, because if they don't fit with the business you're working with and people don't accept you for that, then actually you're in the wrong business. So so I think those are lessons you have to learn, and it's tough. It's tough to hear, particularly at the start of your career, but it, I think, made me stronger. A bit like Susie saying, she had a really bad mentor which taught her how not to be a mentor and not, you learn from all these negativities, and hopefully it makes you a stronger person. So yeah, my advice is be true to yourself and don't compromise on your ideals.
Thank you.
I can add a little anecdote to that. I think I actually benefited by being one of the only women in travel tech years ago, because everybody was obsessed about, oh my gosh, we must have a woman on the panel. We can't just have 4 like white guys sat there. And it was a bit like, I ended up being asked to be on every panel, which of course I was on. So I kind of not took advantage of the situation, but actually I benefited from the situation, because that certainly, helped me build my profile probably quicker, because I was a female and because there weren't many females sitting at the front of the room back then.
It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Thank you. What advice would you have given your younger self? Okay, Claire.
Don't be too, I don't know how to say this. Look, you come into, I think when you start your career, you have very fixed point of probably what you want to do and where you want to go. And I think it's be prepared to take that sideways thing, and don't look back too much and say, why didn't I do that? Don't live on your regrets. I think I call it the sliding door moment, and for people of my generation, we know exactly what that means, but the younger generation haven't got a clue, which is, when you stand there and you go right or left, and and you sit there and you think, wait, maybe I should have gone left, but actually if you turn right, just go with it and take those opportunities, and don't beat yourself up for decisions you might make that maybe changed what you think your life should have been like.
That's really good advice.
You'll never know.
Yeah. Really, really good advice. That question was from Liz. Susie, Victoria, you're just starting out.
Well, yeah. I would just say, what advice would I give my younger self? I think it's like it's all encompassing of like what has been discussed. It's just always like show up as your authentic self. But I think there's this discussion that has been happening a lot, like, can I be my true authentic self in the workplace? And I think the conclusion I've come to is that it's just understanding that there's different versions of you. The version of you that you speak to your parents is not the same version that you would go to, you speak to your friends or work. But at the fundamental, you do show up as yourself, but it's just different parts of you. And I think it's so essential to be in an organization or just to navigate through life, showing up as yourself, but remembering as well, okay, but there is still different parts of me that different people will see. I think that's been shared on the panel, to constantly show up as yourself. I think I've kind of gone through a process where I'm now getting back to who I was, like the confident young woman I was before uni hit me. And I think, I would just tell my younger self to not let almost societal pressures change you or shape you, but really navigate through life, living truly on your own terms.
Brilliant. Thank you, Susie.
Advice I'd give my younger self would be, just because somebody's older and has a longer career path doesn't mean they know better than you.
Yeah.
Even though as someone who's older and on my career path, I'm always right. I just want to say that.
Oh, any questions for anyone else? There's no questions in the chat. Okay.
I have a question. What advice would you give your younger self, Claire Golden?
Drink more water. Definitely.
That's all those bars that you were taking.
It is all those bars,
to,
exactly. Thank you so much. Honestly, we could talk all day, I'm sure, but it has just been just really lovely to have you all on the call. Great advice, some really brilliant points too, and just want to say a huge thank you for your time. We got the early slot, but thanks again, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank
Thank
you all so much.
you.
I enjoyed that, enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's great being here.
Bye.
Thank you to Claire, Suzie, and Victoria. What a fantastic session to finish us out for day 4. Thanks everybody for joining, and tune in tomorrow for day 5, where we will be talking about intersectionality, and we'll be talking about promoting DEI through conversation. So feel free to join in and check out the rest of the program then. And remember that all of this content is available for you to consume on the SharePoint page as well. Have a fantastic afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you are. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.